and welcome to a Script Notes special, where we have a very special guest joining us today. But of course, as always, it is me, um, as one of your hosts, along with Navian as the other. Hi, Navian.
Hello.
It is quite an early morning for you, I think, a bit earlier than we usually do, but hopefully we can get this going and we can have a great interview today because we have a special guest that we've been trying to figure out how to get on here for about a year now. But we've finally got an excuse, and it is, of course, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, Evin Donohue.
Close enough. It's Evin Donohoe. You
Donohue.
basically got it. I don't know why I'm given that qualification, but yes, thank you.
Evan, you are, of course, head of business and legal for TPI. You're the, I think is it right? Am I right in saying that you're the longest standing full-time employee alongside Steve himself?
Yes, that is accurate to say. Steven's been designing Blood on the Clock Tower since 2014, and I've been playing it with him since a few months after he started designing it. And in 2016 was when he recruited me to start TPI with him. We've been working together since then.
And why don't you tell us a bit about that? How did TPI come to be? How did you? We didn't really ask Steve this, but where did the name come from? Just
Oh, the name was
tell us all
chosen by
about everything in the history of Clock
just,
Tower.
just the beginnings. Well, forgive me if you've heard the story before. It is a story I do enjoy telling, so it's come out through a lot of venues. But the Pandemonium Institute as a name was Stephen's choice. Basically, because to have an institute for pandemonium is a funny idea. It's kind of an oxymoron, like this idea of a regal place for the study and enshrinement of absolute chaos, which is a little bit how it feels sometimes when you're running a small business in entertainment and games and culture. Yeah. Um, as far as starting this thing up went, it was in 2016. I had to travel overseas for about 4 or 5 months, and during that time, I was like, well, I'm leaving Australia. I'm not going to not play Clock Tower. So I asked Stephen, like, hey, before I go, could I get one of those Clock Tower prototypes to take to the United States with me, just so I can play it while I'm away? I'll come around and help you build it. And while we were building that prototype for me to use in the US, one of those old handmade grimoires, if you ever saw one, he said, hey, I'm thinking of starting this as a business and actually selling the game. People kept asking Stephen, hey, when can I buy this game? And he'd have to say, you can't. It's just the thing I'm making. It's just the thing I play with my friends. And enough people asked that he realized this is something that we could do. We could make this our livelihoods. So he said, hey, do you want to start a board games company? Do you want to help me get Clock Tower out there? And I said, Stephen, I've no experience in any of this. I don't know how to produce a board game. And he said, great, neither do I. Let's figure it out together. So yeah, that's how that went. And I'm told by Stephen later on that one of the influences he had for kind of picking me to start a business with was, of all the people who asked him for one of those handmade grimoires at the time, I was the only one who also offered to help build it with him. Everyone else was just like, hey, can you just like do this thing? And then yeah, so
Incredible.
that is the business origin story. Yeah.
So did you know Steve before 2016, before 2014?
Well, no, actually, the night we met was that what we count as sort of the Clock Tower birthday. Stephen had already been designing it for a little while. He'd run a few games of it with friends and stuff, but I was running a board games festival out of my house, the Salisbury Festival of Board Games. It's something we do usually twice a year. We throw a 3-day board games house party. And Stephen had heard about this and wanted to run what at the time was his version of Werewolf with a group of strangers, just to kind of try it out on some unknowns. So he came to the Saturday night of the Salisbury Board Games Festival. We started off, I was in a game of Clusterfuck, which is a party game from the Cards Against Humanity folks. From that game of Clusterfuck, I mentioned, hey, I want to play a game of Last Night on Earth. And Stephen was like, oh, I own Last Night on Earth and all the expansions. I'll play the zombies for you guys. So we had a whole huge epic game of Last Night on Earth, which is a zombie survival game. It's basically a zombie movie. If a zombie movie was a board game, loads of fun. And at the end of that, Stephen asked, "Hey, look, I've got this version of Werewolf I want to run. This is your house, your event. Could I get a little space to do that?" And by this point, I was probably, a bottle or two of wine in, and I started gathering everyone at the party, like, "Hey, we got this guy, Stephen. We're gonna go play his version of Werewolf. Everyone upstairs." And we went to the huge upstairs room with like maybe 15, 16 people playing and about 10 people watching. And it was just, I found out later, way more attention than he was attending for his game to get at the time. But we had that. It was a very, very early version of what would go on to become Trouble Brewing. Some characters were still the same from that version, but many of them, changed over the years. I was the Baron. Reggie, who started working at TPI about 2 years ago, was the first fortune teller. Philip, who was in some of the early playthrough videos, was the Undertaker. Just kind of this first game that sticks in your mind. And we had that experience that I've seen just hundreds of groups have now, where they play Clock Tower for the first time and go, "Damn, we need to do this all the time. Like, can we get that Steven guy back to run his version of Werewolf?" The very next weekend, Steven came around to the house again. We had about 12 or 15 people come back for another game of Steven's Werewolf at the time. And then we found ourselves, like 3 or 4 months later, we were doing that every weekend. And yeah, it kind of went rolling from there. Just for the whole origin story. Sorry if that was a bit long-winded, but yeah, the night Steven and I met was literally the night that Clock Tower got its first sort of public showing. Yeah.
Nice. No, we do have a fair bit to get through in not very much time,
Oh,
so
of course.
we'll try and keep up the pace a bit more than people might be used to, but that's okay. What do you do? What do you currently do for TPI? What's your position, company? Expand on it a little bit.
Currently, we are undergoing another restructure of the company. I am currently the overall sort of business manager at TPI. And with Reggie, was recently promoted a few months back to assistant manager. So together, Reggie and I are sort of just running the day-to-day of the company. But the main, other than that, sort of just entails operations, meetings, making sure things are running smoothly. My actual areas broadly, in addition to that, the finances, making sure that the books are up to date, that we are following all the laws, all the rules, that we're paying our taxes to the appropriate governments, all of that stuff, and the legal stuff. So I'm not a trained law professional or anything, but I'm the person whose job it is to email back and forth with the lawyers we have and make sure that we are following all the rules, that if we enter into a partnership or agreement with anyone, that there's a contract in place that helps and protects us both. And yeah, outside of that, just making sure that the broad remit, that the business continues to thrive, that we continue to spread blood on the clock tower, that we can eventually make more expansions on new games and have fun doing it. Yeah.
Awesome. There's one question that we always like to ask guests when they come onto this show. And I don't know if you've been able to catch any previous episodes so you know what you're in for.
Ooh, hit me.
What's the best base script?
Best base script, Trouble Brewing.
Okay.
I don't have to think very long about that. I think Trouble Brewing is just bulletproof. Trouble Brewing got about, probably about 8 years of development. Badman Rising and Sex and Violets each got about 5. They each, it's like asking to pick a favorite child or something. But Badman Rising, and to a certain extent, Sex and Violets can still be a little imbalanced depending on what roles go in the bag. Like, you can definitely skew a game of Badman Rising one way or the other by going heavy on kills or heavy on protection. You can really slow that game down to a crawl if you put in the Zombul and certain combinations of characters. Sex and Violence has that a little bit, but not as much. I mainly just think you need to be careful about what goes in the bag with the Vigor Mortis. I think the Vigor Mortis needs more help than some of the other demons. But Trouble Brewing, provided you're not playing with first-time players, you kind of want to curate that experience a little more. But if you've got an experienced group, you put anything in that bag, and it'll be a banger of a game. It's ironclad, it's bulletproof, nothing gets through. Trouble brewing is just always a good time.
Yeah. What do you what do you think most people say? If I made you guess.
Oh gosh. I would okay. Here's a here's a bit of a granular answer. I would say that most people, but not a majority, say trouble brewing. I think that a majority of people will choose Bad Moon Rising or Sex and Violence, but when because a lot of people who have played a lot kind of enjoy that advanced, well, technically intermediate level script. But there's not consensus on which of those two is favorite amongst that. So I think probably about 40% of people would say Trouble Brewing, and then the next 60 would be split, and then 30 each for Bad Moon Rising, Sex and Violence is my guess. So Trouble Brewing is
Uh,
is my guess.
I can tell you, almost everybody we've spoken to has said Trouble Brewing, including every member of TPI we've spoken
Whoa,
to.
whoa, fantastic, great. I've just underestimated the script again. What did I tell you? Bulletproof. Yeah.
All right, I think we're going to talk a bit more about more recent things now. I think Navian wanted to jump in at this point.
Yeah, so we have on our screen for our viewers Race to the Bottom, which is, of course, a Teensyville that you wrote. Have you written anything else, anything more recent, or is it just Race to the Bottom?
I so anything more recent. I wrote another Teensyville back in the day called Vigor Mortis High School, which actually it got its name because I just written like Vigor Mortis draft script or something as like a working title, and Steven glanced at it for a second and thought it said Vigor Mortis High School, and I'm like, that's the name, like that's perfect. But no, I kind of haven't, as I've been saying to people a lot lately, particularly at Clocktower Con, I've been riding a desk a lot these days. You know, I'm doing a lot of emails and spreadsheets about Blood on the Clock Tower, but not a lot of actual Clock Tower. I don't. I generally prefer to play in person, so my kind of opportunities are a little limited for this stuff. But I did build a script recently. I can't go into too much detail because unfortunately it has some unreleased characters on it. But that script is called Somebody Told Me, and the point of that script is to get that song stuck in people's head whenever they play the script.
It works.
But it's it's a script based around it's all single kill demons, no madness, and based around a lot of the characters that can claim something or other happened. Like for example, there's a widow on the script, so people can say, like, "Oh, I've learned there's a widow in play," or not. Something, yeah. I'm just loading it up now to see which characters I can talk about
We'll
on
have
this
to
script.
talk about that one later.
Yeah. Yeah. So the widow, um, the puzzle master's there. Wow, there are a lot more unreleased characters in the script than I thought. So I have been script building, but it's more to try and kind of lead towards getting some characters tested for expansions and getting those out sooner. But no,
But
in
we
terms
won't
of
be able to see them for a while.
yes, I'm afraid not. We gotta keep a tight lid on that from now on, at least. Yeah.
We'll definitely be touching on subjects related to that later. I think a lot of people
Yes.
are excited to hear about.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. I think you kind of covered that question. So, are you familiar with our tier lists we're going to ask about now?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the tier list. Take me through it, please. Hit me.
Are you able to watch the Twitch VOD of this? Or the Twitch stream of this?
Oh yeah, let me head over there now. Okay.
This is what we call a setup, by the way. This is going to come back later.
Okay.
So this is a tier list that Navian and I put together over several weeks and several long hours. It's all of the released characters, but how good they
Okay.
are for script builders. So, Butler you can kind of fit in anywhere, whereas Minstrel breaks things, sort of thing. Not how fun they
Yes.
are or how powerful they are, but how good they are for script building. What do you think of our list? Do you think we've made any major errors?
Oh, For script, so what? So the criteria of S tier is can fit comfortably on any script.
Yeah, can fit on almost any
More or
script,
less, yeah.
and will do interesting things on almost any script.
Okay. I like deviant. I think that's where it should be. So I'm gonna glance at the top and then the bottom. I also love the butler love. I'm sure that the butler is one of the more maligned characters. General, love it. Drunk, of course, always a winner. I do like that there is only, as far as I can tell, one madness character. There is only the Serenovus. The
Harpy's in
matron.
S tier.
What is it? Oh no, the
Harpy?
harpy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so my view on madness is I love madness as a mechanic. I think I think it's a strong spice, and like one or two characters max on a script. As soon as you get beyond that, it becomes this like unsolvable metagame. Some people really love lots of madness. I think it's just a little bit. You only want to doubt people a little bit here and there. The other thing, just to nitpick, just to create some dissent and some conversation, is the fearmonger in S tier. I would probably knock that down one, just because it's noisy. It's a minion that is in play. So in one minion games gives the good team a pretty massive advantage from the very beginning of the game. So great minion, fits in well with lots of different characters and different types of scripts, but just has that little thing on it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Looking at the bottom.
So just to clarify for you as well, the last two rows you don't really need to look at because they are not applicable. So that's just a bunch of fabled that don't really impact script writing. And uncharacter, which is specifically for Deus Ex Fiasco, because that was sort of like taken back from public release. So the lowest tier of actual like character for script writing would be the D tier.
Yes. Oh no, I'm seeing. Okay, the D tier. Is that chambermaid down there on the D tier?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It requires.
I'm seeing.
It requires
It
demons
requires
with different wake patterns, really.
Yeah. Or characters with the same wake patterns as demons to bluff as, which means you've got to bring a lot of homogeneity onto the script. So yeah, it kind of if you're not giving the appropriate bluffs and the demon isn't picking them, it's kind of a okay. The Duchess, I kind of agree with the Duchess there, because the Duchess is there to fix scripts that don't have enough of this stuff. So it's not there for script building; it's there for script doctoring. It's there to help. It's a patch, not a feature. The I am more fond of the Mastermind than I think a lot of people are. I think the Mastermind gets played as a safety net too much and should be played as a proactive go out and do this. But it's one of those many Bad Moon Rising roles that doesn't work outside of Bad Moon Rising, which you've also got the Minstrel, the Professor, the Courtier, the Chambermaid, the Mastermind. It's not surprising that half of the D tier is Bad Moon Rising roles.
Yeah.
And the Zombul. Heck, yeah, 7. Yeah, you've got a quarter of Bad Moon Rising in the can't build a script with a tier.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we just wanted to get your thoughts on that because this makes it more of a script building episode, which is our job.
Of course.
Evin, back to you.
Yeah, so have you been playing a lot of Clock Tower recently?
I have. I got to tell you, I'm on a robust losing streak. It's character building, to say the least, which is fun because like we had Clock Tower Con Australia last weekend, and I've been playing some online streams here and there with Noobs on the Goof and the Grim, just for some exhibition games. And people are saying, "Oh wow, you work for TPI, you'll probably be great at it." I'm like, well, normally you might be right, but I'm easy pickings right now. I'm in a slump, but it is the best fun. Probably the place I get to play most consistently is with Newcastle, Australia. That is has a Clock Tower group that's been running 2 or 3 years now. I moved away from Newcastle 5 months ago, back to Sydney, but I still try and get up there and play with them at least once a month because it's just a really great group, and I enjoy playing with them. So that's where I'm getting most of my Clock Tower in. And again, at Clock Tower Con, there was just a ton of it there. It was just great to get out and play. Yeah.
I'm glad you weren't too busy at the con to actually get some games in.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm happy to tell you that people are already speculating about what's on somebody told me.
Oh, let me see.
All right, I'm deactivating that chat.
I'll go through the characters that are released, and if we're lucky, I'll slip up and forget which ones aren't released or not. So the characters that on the scripts that are out are Investigator, General, Snake Charmer, Sage. Yeah, and that's another somebody told me. You can say, "Hey, I've learned this thing. I died at night." La la la. That's it for townsfolk. Snitch, Klutz, Puzzle Master, and then 2 unreleased outsiders. The Widow and the Marionette, and then 2 unreleased minions, and then the Imp and 2 unreleased demons. So if you want to take those characters and then extrapolate, it's certainly not enough. But that's the known parts of somebody told me. Everything else is classified.
The fun part about the speculations and spoilers channel is that they do not need much to go quite far.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Quite accurately too.
Yeah.
As you went in.
So another quick question, since you have been playing quite a lot recently, are there any favorite custom scripts that you've been playing with? Ones that you haven't written?
Let me look at this. I'm just looking at because I did start keeping a record recently. Again. Oh man. Okay. There was a script. It will be. We ran a few in advance games at Clock Tower Con Australia, but it's gonna a modified version of this script is going to be the TPI release script for the next roll release. I quite enjoyed that script. I ran a couple of games with that at Clock Tower Con. I ran a game before Clock Tower Con of Pass the Parcel. That was a super fun game. That's free, and Silent. I was in a game at Clock Tower Con where Silent ran the Lord Mayor's shit show, and again, losing streak notwithstanding, that is one of the most fun I've had playing Clock Tower in a while. So yeah, the next release scripts, I think they're going to make a few adjustments to it. They being Jams and Ben and a few others, but it's mostly going to be that. And Pass the Parcel and Lord Mayor's shit show have all been high in my ratings recently.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for answering some of these script questions. But I think it is about time to shift the subject a little. So TPI's internal structure, that's been going through some changes recently. There's been some people joining, some people leaving, some people kind of changing their duties. I think you mentioned Reggie. Did you mention Reggie earlier? You might have mentioned Reggie.
Yes. Reggie, who prior to now had been handling our inbox, handling our fulfillment network, and producing Blood on the Clock Tower Live, is stepping up as assistant manager. And we've taken on someone else to take over fulfillment and inbox. And of course, Reggie still doing Blood on the Clock Tower Live. They're gearing up. I think that starts in Edinburgh in a couple of days. Yeah, quite soon.
Okay, yeah, and Jams has been taking on some more and other duties recently. So I don't know, we just kind of are asking a general question about some of these internal structure changes. Do you have anything else to really comment about that?
Well, so without getting into the nitty gritty of who's doing what, so Jams has been taken on towards the start, basically from the start of this year in an official capacity, taking care of social media and has been quarterbacking the character releases. with what we're doing with TPI, coordinating with No Rules Barred, with G-Stone in China, who released the character simultaneously to the Chinese audience. So for most people, their roles and duties outside of probably myself, Reggie, and Steven, their roles and duties at TPI are largely unchanged. We took on Claire for fulfillment and inbox. Claire's fantastic. Has been hitting lots of goals with that. But mainly the goal is to clear everything off of Stephen Medway's plate so that he has time, opportunity, and mental space to craft expansions and more games. That's probably goal number one. So rather than talk about the structure specifically, I'll talk about what the structure is designed to accomplish, and that's number one. So the Pandemonium Institute has been around for a few years now. We've got Clock Tower out. We made it through the Kickstarter. We're functioning as a business, and we're able to pay ourselves now and employ a few people to do some cool stuff as well. But at the end of the day, we are still a company predicated around the creative works of this one guy, Stephen Medway. And so we won't survive long term unless we pick up a different line of business as well, or unless we give him the opportunity to do this stuff. So me taking on management, Reggie taking on assistant management, and sort of trying to figure out where our priorities lie has all gone towards that. And we think we are onto something now. Stephen has had, over the past few months, more opportunity to design this stuff, to work on existing characters, which I think you might have a few questions about in a bit, and all towards getting towards expansions. We're getting renewed focus on getting the app locked down solid, on getting that to a point where we can put it on blast to the world. We want to give that a sort of a dust over with a user interface designer and professional, and take this amazing thing that Stefan has created and continues to make, and just give it that what you might say in the theater, give it that outside eye, get that third party to come in and look at it, give their feedback, and with just a real focus on usability. We want to make it as intuitive as possible for people who maybe aren't as Clock Tower literate, and get more people sticking around in the app before we put it out there to the world. So this has been sort of a long rambling answer, but yeah, we've got probably, in terms of the internal team, as in people who are on our Slack channel and who participate in regular meetings with someone at TPI, there's 8 of us, and then probably 3 or 4 contractors that we're working with pretty consistently in sort of graphic design, web development, stuff like that. And what we've been working on is just structuring the thing so that Stephen can be, he only has to do 2 things: be a CEO, kind of sit down and figure out the overall direction of the business, and design games, and design cool games that the rest of us can enjoy.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, TPI has only got, about 8 people regularly and some contractors. So like, as a smaller and somewhat younger company, you do rely pretty heavily on those part-time contractors and even volunteers as well.
Yes.
Is there any area that you think that has really shined in, or is there anything that maybe, if you could redo it, you think you might do differently in that aspect?
Just to give the initial caveat, which is going to be the equivalent of the Simpsons quote, "It's my first day." We've been developing Clock Tower with the intent to develop it, to run it as a business, for about 8 years now. And still 8 years in, only in the past year or 2 are things coming around where it's not my first time doing something, or Steven's first time doing something. We didn't come in as experts or anything with business training. So most of what we're doing has just been, you talk to someone who's an expert in it to get some advice, or you Google it, or you figure it out, or you just work through it. It's been this 8 years of problem solving. Some things we've done well, some things we haven't. I always think my biggest regret of the thing we could have done better that we just didn't, and we should have, is communication. Particularly in and around the Kickstarter campaign. we didn't communicate with our backers, with our audience, as well as we could have. We didn't set expectations for how we could communicate. Granted, there was some early controversy around the Kickstarter with the all too glowing shut up and sit down review and so forth. So we were a little cowed from interacting with people because it was usually a negative experience off the bat. But that's also our job to deal with that and communicate well and be there for the people who were being good and did back the game, and not sort of frightened of the overwhelming minority of people who were kind of being nasty about it. So yeah, in terms of just that's one thing that we definitely could have done better, and just slowly learning how to communicate as a company rather than as a group of individuals, how to coordinate. One thing that has come of that is we have engaged less and less in announcing what our plans are, because we don't want to say that something is coming and then experience a problem with it, like a 2.5 year Kickstarter delay, and then disappoint people. So what this means is the things we are working on, we generally they'll typically be available pretty soon after you hear about them. So there are some things happening that are pretty cool. We just don't want to say anything yet to get people's hopes up, and give ourselves the space to continue screwing up and continue learning about all of this stuff. Is there time for me to go on about a thing I think we've done well,
I mean,
or
that depends on you. We're a little bit behind schedule for the time you gave us, but if you can extend a bit, that's.
I can stay on a little bit longer, because I would hate to sit here and
just for
trash
context,
ourselves.
We're probably about 10 minutes behind where we expect it to be.
Okay. That should be fine. So for things we've done well, I'm gonna sort of name two areas. One, I think the fulfillment. This is going to be boring, but I think the fulfillment network we put together, the means we have of actually getting Blood on the Clock Tower out, has worked out pretty well. So that's logistics. Again, it's not exciting, but from seeing the kind of feedback we're getting from customers, from people ordering the game, seeing how Reggie was handling that the past 2 years, seeing how Claire's handling it now. People seem pretty happy with what they're getting when they order the game, when they sort of purchase through us. It's one of those areas that you want to be invisible. You don't want it to be an issue. So we kind of organized on the back end, at least. And the other thing, which again correlates with the first thing I said that was a problem, was I think we have a commitment to making a quality product that has served us and served players. So when we were late on the Kickstarter, the sort of demand for stop tweaking the game and get it out now was overwhelming. And it would have made our lives easier to just go, you know what, it's ready, it's finished, let's just get it out, so that people on the internet stop screaming at us and that we are no longer breaking our promises to deliver it when we said we would. But we stuck to our guns. We sort of said to ourselves, as long as the game is good, people won't remember it's late. The game is only late for a short amount of time. A bad game is bad forever. So what we probably needed to do was be better at setting expectations and communicating. But the actual fact of having a commitment to quality and putting out something that we would be proud of has, I think, created a better game for everyone playing it. And it was probably, and this sucks for everyone who had to wait for the Kickstarter, it's probably a better move for the business, because we have this product now that we almost don't need to do any marketing for. Like the product is the marketing. People play Clock Tower and then they go, I want to play this more, and then they go out and get it. So I think just commitment to quality is one thing we've done pretty well. Yeah.
People won't remember it's late, unless, of course, you talk about it on interviews, right?
Oh, and yeah, all the time. Yeah, just the whole guilt complex about it. Every interview. Gosh, yeah.
So yeah, we've kind of touched on some of the things that you've done internally, but you talk about the Kickstarter fulfillment. And I want to ask you about some questions about how you chose who to work with there. So, for instance, you worked with Panda for your publishing worldwide, and as well as G Stone for your publishing in
Yes.
China. What attracted you to those companies?
So for Panda, around the time that I sort of accepted Steven's offer to help produce Clock Tower, I went around and talked to as many people as I knew in the gaming industry, people who'd run Kickstarters, people who sort of knew about this stuff, and did a lot of research online. And amongst those people, sort of all roads led to Panda. And I do have to give a huge shout out here to Jamie Stegmaier. Jamie Stegmaier's blogs about not only did Jamie Stegmaier sort of self-make his own board games company, not only does he make fantastic games, he has relentlessly blogged the entire process. And so a lot of what we modeled ourselves on as a business in terms of just the logistical act of producing a board game was borrowed from the Jamie Stegmaier blog. So absolute massive shout out. If you or anyone listening is contemplating starting an independent games publishing company, those ones are a must read. There's like hundreds of them. You don't need to read them all. But if there's a thing you don't know about, there's a 99% chance he's written an article about it. So Stonemaier Games works with Panda GM. A lot of the people I talked to said Panda GM they make the best quality games. They are a little bit more expensive, but if you're a first timer, they will hold your hand through the whole process. They will be engaged, and they will make an excellent quality product at the end. So I met with one of the Panda Games representatives at Origins Game Fair in 2018 in Columbus, Ohio, and got an introduction from a mutual friend to this guy, Joe Wiggins, and managed to get him into a game of Blood on the Clock Tower with one of the prototype copies I had. It was a five-player Teensyville where we were just getting strangers to play at this local cafe, being like, "Hey, can you come and like play this game so this manufacturer can get a sense of what it's like?" It was just like this game that barely took place at all, but we got 2 Teensyvilles in, and the next day Joe found me at the convention and said, "I've been thinking about that game all night. We'd love to take a punt on it." And Panda is that nice company that's in this position where they've got enough business through larger clients than us that they have the fund budget, they can take some risks, and they took a risk on us.
All right.
And I got to say, of everyone we worked with, Panda has consistently been the best. We love Panda. They've contributed to the product design of the game itself, contributed a lot of ideas that made it into the final product. They're always patient, always excellent. Just 10 out of 10, 5 stars. Panda GM all the way.
All right. You have, of course, worked with a number of other people, and I'm going to word this question as carefully as I can.
I also want to acknowledge I talked
yeah.
only about Panda then. You also mentioned G Stone. I do need to give a shout out for G Stone as well. That relationship is ongoing. Getting Blood on the Clock Tower out in China is an interesting challenge because of a lot of the counterfeiting and so forth. So in the West, we've developed a product and we're selling that product. In China, the path seems to be licensing and events. So we're kind of figuring out, well, how do we make this an event thing as well? G-Stone's with us on that journey along the way. They're committed. They're wonderful. They were excellent hosts when we visited China. Again, and the translation of the game they made is, as far as the feedback we've gotten, pretty good. I didn't want to leave G-Stone out of that answer. Just, yeah.
That's fair.
Great marks for G-Stone. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
No, just super quickly, because time. But are there any other people that you've worked with before I ask the next question that we have planned? Do you want to give a quick shout out to?
Honestly, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sure there are going to be people who I'm like, well, I do have to say, John Van Fleet, who has done a lot of the original art for Clock Tower, has been wonderful. I don't work with John Van Fleet directly. I think I've spoken to him once, maybe. I answer the emails, I pay the invoices, but he just creates consistently great work. Steven loves working with him. We've got a lot of those original pieces. Like the art for Clock Tower, we've got the originals hanging up in our home offices and stuff, and there's just super cool. He's always been great to work with. We hope to work with John Van Fleet for a long time. And for anyone else we're working with who's been awesome, you know who you are. I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank right now. I'll randomly shout out cool names as we progress
To be clear,
through the interview, maybe.
That's fair. To be clear, we did not give Evin these questions in advance, so he is answering completely like off the cuff. So our apologies if you are a fantastic person who's worked or company who's worked with TPI, and Evan's forgotten you exist. Yeah. So like I said, I'm going to try and ask this question as carefully as I can. But I do feel like I need to ask it because it is a business question, and particularly a business question about
of course
partners that you. Your decision to work with No Rolls Barred was met with quite a lot of criticism, mostly after everything allegedly happened last year. There were some people who warned TPI about the potential for it to end badly. How much research went into your decision? And do you have anything that you want to say to people who criticize the decision at the time?
Ooh, for No Rolls Barred, the amount of research that went into that decision, I'm not going to speak too broadly on this. Mainly, this is sort of, I don't want to speak for the company in the sense of speaking for everyone at the company, but I would be lying if I said we didn't have a few people warn us off of No Rules Barred and working with Adam Blampied specifically based on prior history and prior events. From looking into what had happened there, I think, genuinely believed that this person was had done the work to merit a second chance, from both what we'd read and from people we'd spoken to. And also, as we learned throughout the events of last year, No Rolls Barred is bigger than just that one personality. Since Adam has left the channel, we've entered into another great season of No Rolls Barred plays Blood on the Clock Tower. We're developing relationships with people across that company. We had a lot of meetings with them where they talked about their internal protocols. We had people visit the offices and speak with them. And so it is bigger than just that one personality. And yeah, if we're doing shout out of people who've been good to work with, despite the controversy and a lot of the negativity that was going around, No Rules Barred and the people who work there and who are working with us through all this have been great and generous and open. Not saying that it wasn't difficult and that anytime there is, criticism or critique from those on the internet, especially when details about a thing are not known, even by us, it can be easy for negativity to develop, for emotions to get strong. But No Rolls Barred were great throughout a lot of that and very open, very understanding with a lot of what we were asking of them throughout the latter half of last year, and we're happy to be continuing working with them. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered all the specifics of your questions, but I think that's answered a lot of the gist of it. Yeah, do you want to follow up with anything there? Is there anything that that you want to ask more about that?
I think the only follow-up question that I would have is like, what went into the decision to continue the working relationship? Because there was also a lot of criticism of Trident Media, and in particular one of their executives at the time.
Yes. So, well, first of all, if we need to get into the nitty gritty, basically by the time of No Rules Barred season 2, there was an obligation to produce a series of Blood on the Clock Tower with them. If we had decided, oh gosh, man, I don't know, then we probably would have worked harder at exercising that. But what went into that decision was, as I said previously, speaking to the manager of that company, speaking to and basically them being transparent with us about what their internal processes are. The interesting thing about Adam being stood down from that company is, as best as we can tell, because of course there are certain, UK and employment laws that prevented them from speaking specifically about a situation, about an ongoing thing. But as best we can tell, Adam being stood down was part of their process working well. In a company where processes weren't being followed, then the thing that drew attention to them and ended up engendering a lot of the original criticism wouldn't have happened. It's kind of an irony of the organization and the process drawing criticism for acting properly, right? So we did get a lot of insight into what their internal processes are for handling situations such as the one that came up, just to continue to speak euphemistically. And we were able to, again, send emissaries, people we like and trust, to go to the offices, talk to people, as I said, throughout the course of working with No Roles Barred. We've also, outside of the top-down management, just as people, gotten to know a lot of the people and performers there in the channel, and we were able to get a sense of the temperature of what the working conditions there are like on a day-to-day basis, and into the judgment call as people that they were trying their best in doing the right thing, and that we didn't want to disappoint fans of No Rules Barred, fans of Clock Tower. We didn't want to cut out all these other fantastic performers and great players who we love, who were doing the right thing, and a company that, as best we could tell, was trying its best in a difficult situation. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think we're quite behind schedule. That's okay. We'll be fine.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
There's a section that we can fire through a little bit later, so hopefully
Okay.
we'll be able to get that done quite quickly. Ian, do you?
Yeah, so we'll move on to our next area here, which is the changes to characters and jinxes that we have seen recently. So
Yes.
Steve, of course, has gotten onto Twitter, sometimes incorrectly called X, making those changes pretty public. There's always been some amount of peeking behind the curtain, if you will, including the blog and Instagram posts literally called Behind the Curtain.
Yeah.
So, TPI has sort of kind of let in some looks at the script and character making process. But recently they've gotten more frequent and also more specific. Do you want to talk about the reasons that you decided to go in that direction, as well as maybe, some of the specific changes that have been made?
Okay. This I will define as best I can put it is letting Stephen cook. So, as I said before, we are a company predicated primarily around the creative works of this one person, Mr. Stephen Medway. And what has been happening in the past few months is that he has gotten some relief from a lot of the previous sort of operations and managerial duties he had and dealing with different projects, to sit down and attack some of these characters that he has felt for a long time needed a tweak or a buff or an update or anything. So the best way I can put this is how Stephen wants to do it, and it's his show, and I'm all for it however he wants to do it. The best way I can put it is that this is sort of how the iterative process of designing, updating Blood on the Clock Tower took place from about 2014 to 2018, except instead of it playing out in front of the same 40 or 50 people in just our gaming group in Sydney, it's now playing out on Twitter on a global stage. And I think this, just having that freedom, it's less about we as a company sat down and decided to do character changes this way. My belief, and I don't want to speak for Stephen here, but this is my take, is that it's more just about reclaiming and exerting some of that creative freedom to engage in the iterative process, particularly with experimental characters, kind of going, hey, these characters are experimental. Although some of them have been out for years now. I know the change for the Balloonist has been particularly controversial. But from when it was just the one group and there were less implications to this, we would sit down and play. Stephen would turn up and he'd say, oh, look, I changed the chambermaid, just for an example. Or the sailor. The sailor went through about 5 different iterations. Like, I changed the sailor. The sailor does this now. We're like, oh, cool, that's interesting. We sit down and we play with a new sailor, and Stephen sees how it goes and so forth. So this is how Stephen likes to work. I don't think he wanted to muck around with the experimental characters in such a way that each little iteration needed to be privately tested. Stephen, like me, prefers to play in person. Nothing against online. It's just where our predilections lie. And so rather than agonize over each one, he's doing what he used to do and what made the game originally great, which is, hey, let's try this. This is the change now. This is how this experimental character works now. Some people will hate it, some people will love it, but let's see how it goes. And yeah, I see it as Steven just doing that, having that freedom to muck around with these characters and sharing that with people rather than hiding it is yeah. But basically, we saw, just to put a cap on that. Sorry for the overlong answer, but and I'm happy to keep talking about this if you have more follow up. But there was so long of. Sorry, go on.
Just to be clear, Evan, I think Nathan and I are both fine for time. It's entirely on you and how long you want to talk.
Oh yeah, okay. No, I am also fine for time. I did put an hour on this, but then I am clear after this point. The hour was in case there was more management stuff going on. So,
okay.
Yeah.
we now have let Evan cook in chat.
Yeah. But yeah. So this is yeah. For so long, we saw Stephen so distracted by the pressures of owning a business, running a company, that any way that he is designing games and making updates, I am thrilled for. I'm all for it. And I know it's put a few noses out of joint. Personally, I don't think it needs to be going out on Twitter, but I also don't hate it. And it's like, hey, if Steven has this idea about how to change a character, which for experimental characters up until the release of expansions might continue to iterate, then I think it's probably better than not that he's sharing that with people. Yeah.
You kind of answered the next question in terms of like how many people look at the post before they go live. But if it's just Stephen kind of just doing his own thing, then I do feel like I need to ask you how you stop him from leaking it.
Stop him from doing what? Sorry.
From leaking things, unreleased characters, and so on.
Oh no. I think Stephen more than anyone is sensitive about unreleased characters. I mean, famously, Stephen and I are the only two people at TPI not under the TPI non-disclosure agreement. So we can say what we want. But Stephen and I are both very sensitive to character leaks. We do realize that in a lot of ways, those characters are the future of the company. And he has, I think, necessarily become more and more secretive about some of the characters he's working on as they come in as new ideas. So I don't think there's really a danger from Stephen for leaking characters. I think we're fine on that front. And if there is a character that he wants to leak, he would just arrange it for one of the formal monthly character releases and do it that way. I'm probably more of a danger. Like if you meet me in the real world and we get chatting, I might just be like, by the way, don't tell anyone, but there's a character that does this. And drop little tidbits that way because that's fun and I shouldn't do that. But yeah, I'm a bigger danger than Stephen for this stuff. So yeah.
I think when we spoke to Steve, he mentioned he name dropped 3 characters that are still unreleased during our interview last year.
That sounds about right.
Okay. That does, yeah. Okay, all right. That's his prerogative. Great. It's fine when we do it. It's yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's my belief. Yeah.
For no particular reason, Evans. You just want to say a list of words right now, people watching.
Let's get back to somebody told me. No, I think I'm okay. Are these Mez words? Pumpernickel.
Your first Mez word
Neil
is
Diamond.
yeah, your first Mez word is peasant. Maybe.
So you talked a little bit about how this is sort of similar to his process, Stephen's process from, about 2016 to 2018, where he would just sort of, show up and say, oh yeah, I've changed this or that. But of course, back then, it was a much smaller game. It has clearly just absolutely exploded since, and
Yeah.
deservedly so. It's a fantastic game. But that also means that there's a lot more people commenting about those changes. Some people have reacted really positively, or some of the changes, I should say, have been responded to really positively. Some of them have gotten some mixed reactions. Some of them have gotten some criticism and critique. How does TPI feel about those reactions? Does that at all impact like Steven's cooking process here, or?
I think part of those reactions are part of the process. And again, not to speak for Stephen, but this is a script notes podcast, and script design is in a way game design, and so I can only speak about my perspective of the design process. So not to speak for Stephen, but about him. That the feedback that he values and doesn't value is kind of interesting. He is particularly good at not outright ignoring negative feedback, but making sure not to value it too much. Like to give one example, when people would play Clock Tower and they'd come and give negative feedback, if they had just played their first game and lost, then we would value that feedback a bit less because, like, oh, you're just feeling pretty salty right now. And if they had been the drunk and had just lost because they were the drunk, they would a lot of times come and complain to us at a convention or a promotion thing or something. And we knew just to be like, oh, look, the drunk is the best character in the game. This person is just annoyed they lost. It's not that the negative feedback is ignored. It's just that if the source of the feedback is only negative and doesn't have anything positive to say, then yeah, it's easier to ignore. But this sort of, as you described, a broad array of responses is, I think, part of this process. Stephen's not on Twitter checking all of these replies, but he's aware of them. He, is meeting with people at the company. He's engaged in the process of these characters. He's talking to people playing games, and that feedback is getting back to him. And throughout the years of designing the game, massive props to Stephen if you get, as you did in a previous episode, a chance to sit down with him and just talk about game design and what makes Clock Tower good, why certain characters are certain ways, or the principles behind the construction of the game. There is that sense of, oh, damn, this guy is world class. Like this is stuff I never would have thought of. It makes perfect sense when you hear it, but in its construction is often counterintuitive. But that doesn't mean that he's insensitive to feedback. And I think part of his talent is choosing which feedback to incorporate. So probably the best example I can think of was, I'll go to an early example. Very early on, when it was still a werewolf variant, there was players could stick around in the game after they died, or they could what we called crossover and leave the game and look at the grimoire. And both myself and Reggie were very early on against the idea of ghosts and ghost votes. And we were like, no, player elimination should mean something. And we could not have been more wrong. So got a mea culpa there. But the other, just from my own experience, element of feedback that I had, which was, I think, incorporated into the final game, was that players should always know their own alignment unless there's a character reason for them not to. So that alignment information isn't affected by drunkenness and poisoning, just because me and a lot of other players thought that would be unfun. The idea being it's fine to obscure to players how to reach their goal, but to obscure a player's goal from that player, to make them unsure of what team they're even on in just a normal sense, that's not fun. And Stephen originally loved the idea of that extra puzzle. He loves a puzzle, loves figuring out, am I good, am I evil? But yeah, it was just too fuzzy for the game, and eventually he took on our feedback, and that became part of the core rule set. Characters should always know their own alignment, unless there's a character reason for them not to, like the lunatic or the marionette. And seeing that puzzle confined to marionette scripts is beautiful because it's just that character, but it's not the whole game. It's not every time you play. I rambled for so long about this, I've forgotten where the question even started. But yes, you asked about putting that stuff out on Twitter, the feedback. It's putting it out in the world means that those responses filter their way back to him, and there might be feedback that he expected. Sometimes people just hate change. They like what they used to, and any change people will get upset about. So we're on the lookout for that. But sometimes and different feedback comes through that isn't feedback we would have expected, that changes things, that affects things. So it, as you said, has been controversial for some, has been met with criticism, but I think that's part of the process. It does destabilize the player base a little bit, because the game they're playing and the game they know how to play can change a little bit from week to week. But as I said much earlier, we are committed to eventually releasing a high quality product. And I think this is one of those hits that we're willing to take so that eventually we can release another extremely high quality product. That's my thinking.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I just want to make a quick comment of my own, which is that I think a really important part of any creative process when you are releasing whatever you're working on into the wild and receiving feedback on it, a really important skill that you need to develop is to learn how to filter the feedback, right? To
Yeah.
get the context that it has been given in and evaluate what your goal as the creator of this thing is, and whether you are meeting that goal correctly and this person just simply wants you to have had a different goal, versus where are you not actually meeting your goal, something is being obscured or gone off a sideways path instead. So it's definitely a good skill to build. So it's good to hear that Stephen is considering things like the context that it's coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. He is not just a great game designer, but that is part of game design, is that ability to filter and contextualize feedback. Yeah, he's great at that.
Sure. So we've had it mentioned in chat with. I'm going to read this comment. With the change to Balloonist, it seems the solving for outside accounts become less of a design goal. On the current base scripts, outsider and outside account is quite important for solving the minion or demon in play. I wonder if evil, and I think that's supposed to be Evin. It's funny because Evan and I had a conversation about that recently. Has thoughts on that. And I'm just going to tack on, while we're talking about Balloonist, I'm going to tack on a question that we did get from somebody, which is, why is it not a new character? Why can you not have both of those characters? They seem to be significant.
I can only talk about this in the context of the old Balloonist, and that the old Balloonist I believe had some elegant design to it, but it was also clunky in terms of Clock Tower. You want a character to be able to work in games of any size, and if you've got a 15-player game, like not counting Travelers, 15-player game and a Balloonist in that game, the chances that they'll get that 4 nights of information is pretty high, and they'll get that 4 nights of information usually well before the end of the game, and they'll have narrowed the demon down to 1 of 4 people. It's not going to happen every time, but when the Balloonist makes it through those 4 nights, it's just huge information for the good team. Usually those 4 people, 1 or 2 of them are already dead by that point because they've been executed or the demon killed them at night. So it's just this overpowered character in games of large player counts. You look at the other end, you get a 7-player game, the Balloonist gets 3 nights of information. If everyone's executing right, there's wait, how many nights in you go 6, and yeah. Anyway, they don't get a lot of information, maybe 2 nights. And so just by the player count, with the old Balloonist, the player count alone gives massive variations in the power of the character, and that's true for some, and less true for others, sure. But with the Balloonist, it's absolutely explicit. Then there's also the notion that 1 night of poisoning for old Balloonists just wrecks them entirely, whereas for the new one, it's more of a speed bump. Solving for outside account, talking about that is important, but the balloonist isn't the one-stop shop for solving for outside account. Often solving for outside account is just who's claiming to be an outsider, do they sound credible? Characters that detect outsiders, great. Or characters that add outsiders, you've got to talk about whether they seem credible or not as well, like the balloonist. It's all good players that add or subtract outsiders. Mostly it's evil players, bigger mortars, Baron, Godfather, that adjust the outside account. But for good players that do it, you also want to assess whether their claims are credible. That's probably where most of the outside account solving comes in, going from the mechanical puzzle side of the game to the vibes and deduction side. So I don't think personally that new balloonist is such a huge loss for that. If the storyteller is using the balloonist to try and skip over the demon most of the time, then you're going to get an outsider now and then, and if that person is claiming to be an outsider and they were seen by the balloonist before they claim to be an outsider, then they're still massively useful in that regard. I don't think it's too huge a loss. And I think the new one works better than the old one. And that's me towing the company line. Yeah. No, but I also believe what I said. Yeah.
Maybe I made a couple changes to the notes, I think.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
I just copied and pasted it into my own document, so I don't have the actual Google Doc up.
Okay. Basically, do you want to take the other two?
Yeah, sure. So there have been some jinxes that haven't made it into the app. In particular, the Spy Widow with Godfather, as well as Alchemist, the Spido Father or Spide Alchemist, if you will.
Yeah.
So like some of the changes, most of the changes have made their way into the game, but a few of them that got posted at were either quite delayed in getting there or in particular haven't made it. Were there any specific reasons? Are these just basically like things that are still being worked on?
This is one area you've actually stumped me a little bit. In terms of the nuts and bolts of what game design things are going into the app, I can talk, as you've heard me talk at length about my opinion on the philosophies of game design, our kind of goals as a company. For individual jinxes going into the app, if they haven't been in there yet, that is both happily and unhappily one of the areas of the company that doesn't touch me. That is all worked out between currently Stephen and Jams and Stefan. So if they're not in there yet, it's either just because it hasn't happened yet or because the jinx has been announced, but there's some reason that they want to hold off on implementing it. It's not quite there yet. So I'm sorry I can't give a better answer than that. But yeah, that is outside one of my areas right now, and I'm not across that.
Okay, well,
Well,
do you have any idea if more are coming? Because there was a really big flurry of activity right at the beginning of when Steven started posting, and then it kind of tapered off a little bit. And we've not really seen too much in the last about month, I'd say. Do you know if the plan is to kind of get back to it, or?
well, no, the again, not speaking for Steven here, but my understanding is that this stuff is slowing down. That what you've been seeing over the past few months, what we've all been seeing, is this sort of backlog of Steven noticing things about the existing released experimental characters and saying or thinking, I want to make these changes. I want to do this stuff. These jinxes don't work. One of the goals has been to remove what we call hate jinxes. So remove any jinx that just means two characters can't be on the same script or in the same game. Just get like even if the solution is ugly or clunky, just make sure that every character can be in the game no matter what. That's been one of the goals of this jinx project. Hence the I think the spy and this widow and spy and damsel jinx, the grim spies, the grim viewers and the damsel have a super fun jinx now, which is just damsel's poisoned. So that the damsel can't, by their inclusion in the game, immediately extrapolate that there's no spy or no widow. So there's sort of just been this sort of years-long backlog of, hey, these characters kind of need some updates, or these jinxes need to be worked on, and that without putting an exact number on it, we're nearing the end of that process now, where the existing known experimental characters are getting these little upgrades and upgrades, updates and upgrades. And once that sort of laundry list of things to check off has been done, then it should be full steam ahead on expansions with no set timeline, but the attention can turn towards that because everything that is known now will have been touched up, will have been tweaked, would have had those lines redrawn a little finer. That's not to say that every once in a while Stephen might think of something else and be like, this is a better improvement, let's do that. But the kind of systematic working through of this backlog will hopefully be done in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for talking about all of that, because I think that's kind of what we got you on for, really. But now we have now we have a number of questions I think that some of the people who have joined us will be quite excited to hear about. In particular, the first thing we want to ask you about is the process of character creation, and how long it takes to get from an initial concept to it being out in the world and maybe one day on a script. So, step by step, is it possible for you to just sort of like break that down a little bit and just take us through it? And I think I had a follow-up question.
I'd say
I'll also throw at you if I can find it.
Sorry, go on.
And the follow-up question to that, which I'll also give you now, just so you can think about it and maybe work it in. How much do characters change, and which one of the characters that have been released do you think has changed the most from conception to?
Oh, okay. What I've noticed in my time working with Stephen, working at TPI, working on Clock Tower, I think the fastest way to get Stephen to come up with a new character idea is to just get him in a game of Blood on the Clock Tower. While he is playing a game, he will like get his phone out or pen and paper out and be like, I've just come up with 2 new character ideas. They might go somewhere, they might not. After that, Stephen has, and the subreddit has become a version of this, like, hey, how about a character that does X and Y? And probably about, 19 times out of 20, there's some reason that character doesn't work. Stephen talks about this. I agree that taking character suggestions and listening to people's character ideas isn't fun, because it's not that it's like, oh, this sucks, I hate hearing about this character, but it's because usually there's some reason that the character wouldn't work in Clock Tower. There's some design reason that hasn't been worked into the suggestion. And so to engage in that discussion is to spend most of your time shooting down people's ideas, and that doesn't feel good because they're enthusiastic, and there's usually some kernel of the idea that's cool or interesting, but there's also some reason it just won't work. And to engage with people on that is to tell them their idea doesn't work, and that's not fun. So, however, there are a few people who, friends with Stephen, who consistently will throw a character idea at him, and he's like, "Damn, that's really good!" Consistently will launch out banger ideas. So, kind of, yeah, there's that small group of people that he knows will pitch ideas that don't have one of those kind of killer flaws in them that almost precludes a character, or a character or an idea that's so strong that we've already got someone working on it. And at least we get to say to those people, look, you are thinking on the right lines. This character you've just pitched, like, the idea is so good, we're already working on something like it. You are thinking in the right headspace for Clock Tower. Keep going. Well done. That's awesome. So yeah, those are the 2 main sort of entry points. The small cadre of people that Stephen knows to listen to when they have an idea, and also just get him in a game of Clock Tower, and the ideas will flow from there. In terms of how long it takes to get there, I don't think there's a really consistent answer about that. It all depends on, and we're hopefully going through that change this year, how often Stephen gets to play with the character, what feedback he's getting about the character. And yeah, there's some things can sit on the shelf for years, and then he thinks of that last minute tweak, he fixes the character. Sometimes he'll be like, hey, I fixed this character. I think the Hatter was one that from a kernel of a very different idea I pitched like 6 years ago, and I hadn't thought about it for a really long time. And he's like, "Hey, I've figured out a way to make the Hatter work." I was like, "Damn, I forgot that thing even existed." So yeah, it's the creative process. There's no good answer for that. Now, thinking about characters that have gone through the most changes, the answer this will shock you. It's probably the Pit Hag. Which is absolutely not shocking at all. The Pit Hag, every time there was something, every time we thought it was finished, someone found a new way to break it. Someone found a new way to exploit it, to do something crazy with it that was fun, but that wrecked the game. But the character is so fun, the idea is so strong that Steven just fought. He would go, "Okay, you've broken it that way. What about this? Okay, you've broken that. What about this?" And the kind of very clunkily worded but mechanically effective version we landed on went through so many iterations. Honorable mentions go to the Sailor. Pretty much anything from Bad Moon Rising got a lot of iterations. The Sailor has had about 4 or 5. And when we were, I think I saw a question in chat a while back, like what happened in the 2 years between the Kickstarter. A lot of that was we were troubleshooting about 300 or 400 rules, issues, and clarifications that were raised by the fan base, and we wanted to give those the attention they deserved. And 2 characters that each of them, the discussion on how to fix them was over 10,000 words each, were the Goon and the Pooker. So not that those characters went through a lot of iterations, but those characters got an enormous amount of work put into them. Just massive to land on the final wording that they got. And to go the other direction, honorable mention to the Witch. The Witch probably went the longest without getting an update. It used to just be pick a player. If they nominate tomorrow, they die. And only very late in the process did it get the caveat that they lose their ability if 3 players live, because it was a feels bad moment for that. But the Witch almost made it through as this character that just never changed from conception to inclusion of the game. Yeah. Those are my answers.
Just to follow on from that, there was it was speculated before the release of Hatter that it was going to be a minion with a markedly different ability. Is that something that was ever planned, or is
Yeah. Yeah, I think I originally pitched it as a minion. I just wanted another deck changer, something that lets another escape hatch to swap demons out. The concept was kind of Evil Snake Charmer, very originally. A minion who gets to go, right, enough, I'm doing it. Like, well done, demon, but I'm taking over. I am the captain now. And the Pit Hag can sort of do that, but with this deleterious consequence. So it was kind of like Evil Snake Charmer, they can become the demon, or the Pit Hag that gets to do that demon swapping thing without the downside, but they don't get all the other upsides of the Pit Hag, like changing everyone's characters. So yeah, it kind of started there. Again, the idea, some merit, just like, hey, I want another deck changer. And it eventually iterated, putting it into the game design black box that's Steven's mind, into the Hatter. Yeah.
So, what is the funniest way that you know of that a character has been thought up?
Oh. Okay. A lot of the best characters start as jokes. Well, not a lot of the best ones, but a lot of characters, someone makes a joke, and then it's like, no, there's a character in that. The politician, and I say this having said at the start of this interview that I'm on a losing streak right now. The politician was based on a joke character token that Steven made for me, which I have, at least in early days Clock Tower, my persuasion abilities were high, my deduction abilities were low. And of course, if you're trying to persuade the town on the wrong course of action, you've usually got a lot of supporters because the evil teams are like, yeah, that's a great idea. So the amount of games where the good team was on the right track and me on the good team just sent them in the wrong direction with the power of my persuasion and my bad deduction there was kind of a streak of those games. So Steven's joke character token for Evin was, Evin, you are good. You like change alignments and win at the last second or something like that. Like just making fun of this series of games, and that eventually evolved into the politician. So the politician exists because Steven was making fun of me. And there was one other that when you asked this question, I was like, oh yeah, that there's an unreleased character I can't talk about, but it has a similar origin story. But basically, anything that didn't start as a serious suggestion is fair game for a character creation.
Then how many characters have you personally come up with, and like overall how much credit goes to Steven as like sole character creator versus other people? There's like a long list in the rule book at the start that credits
Yeah.
a bunch of characters to a bunch of different people. So like it's clearly some amount of collaboration in this process, but like how many have you come up with?
Probably that reference in the rulebook is pretty tight. When we say come up with characters, I think of it this way. Sorry, I just got distracted by something out the window. I think of it this way, which is that including a character or not is designing a character is designing a character, but there's also a curation decision at play in Blood on the Clock Tower. If you're like throw a design suggestion at Steven, like sure the kernel, the idea came from another person, and often those ideas, like I said, can be bad, can be good. But I don't think it's ever happened that an idea as pitched has gone into the game purely as it was pitched. There's usually some adjustment, something of like, hey, what about this other thing? So if you look at that list in the rulebook of the first edition of the game, the first printing, I am credited with characters there that I didn't even know I was the kernel lead idea for. I think one of them is Queen of Lies, another unreleased character. But myself and Mariana made a suggestion that went through so many different transformations in Steven's head and just came out as this completely different thing that was almost unrecognizable. And when he explained the chains of connections from this was yours and Mariana's idea, and it went, and this is how it got to where it is, it makes sense. But he also wanted to credit us for the idea because that character wouldn't exist if we hadn't made that initial pitch. Sorry, just going back to the previous answer. Funniest character creation, Psychopath. Was my brother does not play Blood on the Clock Tower. He enjoys it, but it's not the game for him. Like he gets it, but very early on, he was like, "What if the evil team just needed to kill someone right away? like the assassin, they have a minion that kills at night. They can kill anyone. But what if they can't wait that long? What if they just need to go? No, man. Oh, this person needs to die right now. Could you just have a minion just outright like kill them during the day?" And that was a funny idea. And the very first Psychopath playtest game was Philip playing as the Psychopath. And at the original broken rule set, he managed to kill 3 people before he could even be nominated. And of course, the character changed after that, but that was extremely funny. So to go back to your current question about character ideas, how many characters have I come up with? Quite a bit. I think a lot of it is just exposure, just being spending a lot of time around Steven and being like, "Hey, I've got a character idea for this." I try not to pepper him with too many these days. I'm like, community, if you want to help me with this, I'm trying to come up with a cool townsfolk ability for a candle maker because my wife makes candles, so I want that candle maker to be in there, really strong and really cool, you know. But yeah, there's the ones in the rulebook. At a certain point, characters like the knight, the steward, sort of first knight abilities, the noble. Like I didn't directly come up with those characters, but I was like, look, people keep pitching wilder and wilder characters. What if you just go back to basics and get some like solid info characters? You learn some people who aren't the demon. You know, you learn one person who's good. You can just trust them. Like and so yeah, that kind of these kind of nice script building first night characters that aren't the first 4 from Trouble Brewing kind of came from a conversation we had. But yeah, I've got a lot in there, but I'm certainly not the person with the most character suggestions in the game. I think I've been overtaken at this point.
We've already got the butcher. Baker is coming. We need the candlestick maker.
We do need the candlestick maker.
I know we
Yeah.
have at least 2 unofficial mods currently watching. So how about you do a competition for best character ability for the candlestick, and we'll make sure
Yes.
Evan sees it.
Well, I do have to my wife doesn't make candlesticks. She makes candles. So if we can have a candlestick maker and a candle maker, it could be the new Raven Keeper and Raven's Keeper. We can have them
Perfect.
both.
The butcher, the baker, and the candle maker. Perfect.
the candle maker. It was so annoying.
All right, yeah, we need a candle maker competition.
All right.
Yeah. Oh yes. Um, Clock Tower is often played both in online and in person, obviously. And they have very different demands in some cases. Like there are some kind of going to touch on this a bit later, I think, but there are some characters that you play with them in person and they don't work as well online. So just to use one example of a dead character, you could say that it's a lot harder to play in a fun way with Rogue online than it would be in person.
Yes.
And I'm sure there are others that are coming. How does playtesting differ for the online versus the offline? And yeah, just talk to us about how, if there are any differences, and how you run each of those.
This I think it might be an unpopular answer, but as Stephen is returning to a more robust process of playtesting, he definitely does tend to favor offline play. We are aware that the growing audience of online players, and there are so many good things about online play. Like you can play over distance, you can play whenever you want, you can play so much more Clock Tower. It's convenient. Like it's so many cool benefits. But I think from Steven's point of view, and which I'm definitely willing to support, is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We got Blood on the Clock Tower through the process of Steven running games with his friends in person, having a good time. So for the expansions, he is, I think, already identified the groups that he wants to develop expansion scripts with. I think the rough plan is to pick like one group per expansion so they can focus on that thing. And we just have to trust that whatever gets developed through that process, when you're trying to design the game you want to design, and my belief about Clock Tower is that Blood on the Clock Tower is the game Stephen thought he was going to play when someone first told him about Werewolf. Just design the best game you can using the tools you have available to you, and trust that that game will be strong enough and good enough that it can translate well into different contexts than what you designed it, different forms. And that is going from offline to online, to put it that way. So I just trust Steven's process. I say do the process, and then when we get to the online space, we can make adjustments we need to for that. Hopefully there won't need to be that many. And having said that, there is some online playtesting for the expansion slated to take place. So it won't all be offline. There will be a voice in the room for online players. Yeah.
So with all of these new characters that have come out more recently, how many of them do you think we can expect to see given home scripts in these expansions coming up versus how many might go on the greatest show on earth? For who anyone isn't watching, is the sort of like not really a script so much as just a collection of miscellaneous characters.
Yes. The ensemble. I would say at least half. Again, I haven't looked at the expansion scripts in years. So I think I'm like, the one character that sticks out to me is a lock for one of the expansion scripts. And again, I could be wrong as this. I'm pretty sure Legion is just definitely going to be an expansion character and not just in the barrel. But I would say a fair many of them. A lot of basically the older a character is, it's more likely to be on an expansion script because it's older. So a lot of the experimental characters that have been coming out are we've been releasing them because they're closer to finished, and they're closer to finished because they're older. If they're older, they're more likely to be in the expansion scripts. So I would say of the experimental characters, not even of the Kickstarter characters, most of them, and all the experimental characters since then, my guess is probably at least half of them. And I say that happily, not having seen the expansion scripts in a long time, because I don't have to worry about whether I'm giving an accurate answer or not, and can't give spoilers that way. Yay!
Fair enough. So we do know some unreleased characters have been basically removed from being viable playtest characters anymore. Probably most famously, shout out to Barrowfog, of course.
Barrowfog, yes.
But are there any characters that have been released that you think might end up being, sent to the farm, if you will? Any that will be unreleased?
That might get pulled. Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, Barrowfog is exactly maybe 2 Barrowfog games ever. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just a little bit of interference there.
Okay, have you got me again?
You turned into a robot for a minute.
Not just a
cool.
robot, but a very destructive robot that's definitely going to destroy the planet. But I think we can hear you again.
All right. Okay, cool. I think like if to release a character is to acknowledge this idea is pretty strong. And also, I realized in my last answer that people don't really have any way of knowing when we release them, which characters are old and which one are not, unless they're doing other things. I know that that answer doesn't necessarily help people so much speculating what is and isn't going to be on the thing. The Kickstarter characters are, of course, quite old. But anything released lately, there's a chance it's new or it's a chance it's old. The Ogre is pretty new. That's a relatively recent idea. It's the one tidbit I've got to drop there. I don't think anything that's experimental right now is going to be unalived, so to speak, because to get to the point of release, that idea has to be pretty strong. Maybe adjusted in some way, maybe bumped off an expansion script, but no, they're all I think here to stay. Yeah.
Well, speaking of expansion scripts, the next script to be released, it's currently presumed to be Garden of Sin. So, we have to ask, when?
Okay. Going back to my earlier answer about communication, this is something that the answer is going to frustrate because there is not really an answer. We do know it's the most common question we get. We do know that at some point we want to give people a meaningful update on when we can expect the expansion scripts, but the mistake we made with the Kickstarter, you have to give a deadline. We believed in our deadline at the time, but then a number of problems ensued. For this, we don't want to get people's hopes up or lock ourselves into a date to put pressure on ourselves and disappoint. We are definitely feeling that pressure. As I said, the whole we're restructuring a whole business just to give Steven some more free time to do this stuff because we want to get those expansions out. So rather than try and speculate when the expansion will come out, we have to acknowledge that we are not in a position to effectively do that right now and say it'll be out when it's out. What I can say is we are closer to being able to effectively project that. As I said earlier, Steven mostly works through the list of current characters that he wants to update or jinxes that he wants to work on. After that, he'll be able to more fully turn his attention to consistent work on the expansions. And after a little bit of that, when he has a sense again of how far along each one is and how useful the process of iterating and playtesting these expansion scripts are, at that point, we will have at least an internal idea, an effective internal idea of when we can expect these, and then we can make a decision on how much of that to communicate publicly. So it's such a non-answer. I'm almost embarrassed, except to say we don't know, but we are closer to knowing when we'll know, and then at that point we can decide whether that is useful to share or not. Yeah,
I think chat wants to know if you can make an announcement about when you're going to be making an, or maybe make
yeah,
an
that's
announcement after
basically
when
it.
you're making
Yeah,
an announcement when you're making an announcement.
and how do you like announcements? So we put announcements on your announcement. Yeah.
Yeah, we had another sort of follow-up question in there, which was, what will the expansions sort of look like when they come out? Like in terms of the physical copy, will it just be like a single box, like the base 3 editions come in? Presumably, you won't have to buy a whole grimoire. And how will it be coordinated with an online release?
So this is what you touched on is we're moving from game design into product design, and we haven't had a lot of internal discussions about that yet. So I can just like add my thoughts. For an expansion, it's going to need 3 things. It's going to need 20 character scripts. It's going to need tokens in a box. And it's going to need an almanac. For that, I can see them coming in just their own separate box. We just say, hey, here's a box. It's got all the expansion stuff. Once you bust it out, it can live in your grimoire. I don't really see how we could do it differently than that. But for the expansion scripts, like any true expansion, you would need a grimoire to play, but you don't need to buy a whole fresh grimoire. And to be like we haven't made a decision about this yet, but there's a good chance that we do crowdfunding again for the expansions. And as part of that, we'll also give people the option to buy grimoires, buy the original editions, and so forth. So that's probably the aspect it will take. You just buy tokens, token box, almanac, and character sheets for the expansions.
Let's talk a little bit about the scripts then. Who do you think that each of the scripts will appeal to? Obviously, the All Monsters Intermediate, apart from In the House of the Damned, which is my expert. Is there going to be a focus on universality in the scripts, or are you okay if a core script will not for everyone?
That's kind of the second one is where we're going here. I think universality is kind of out the window on these ones. There's Garden of Sin, Midnight in the House of the Damned, and The Tomb. These scripts, so the definition of beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Trouble Brewing is the beginner script. Everyone can play. You play within 5 minutes. It's bulletproof. It rocks. Intermediate is there's more stuff happening. The kind of character dynamics are more complex. But, and this is what mostly marks the difference between intermediate and advanced, in my understanding, is that it's still tough for you in Bad Moon Rising or Sex and Violence to single-handedly lose the game for your team, or to single-handedly win the game for your team. There are these group efforts, these team efforts, these dynamics. You know, if you're picking as the klutz, yeah, that's a single moment where you can lose for your team. But as the klutz, you're also listening to your team. You're using the group's collective knowledge and information. You can make a bad pick, but it's still got that ensemble feeling about it. In an advanced script, I think particularly, if I'm getting this right, is Midnight in the House of the Damned. That protocol has changed. Characters exist that can single-handedly win or lose the game for their team on the back of a risky play. So those flavors aren't going to be for everyone. They are kind of the end stage clock tower content of you are 500 games plus, you're 1,000 games plus. You are completely literate in how this game works, in good and bad practices as much as there can be. The mechanics aren't going to phase you, and you buy into this advanced version knowing full well that risky plays are not only okay, they're incentivized, and you or someone else on your team could make that big play and bring glory to you and themselves, or get the big loss in. It raises those stakes, but by the time you're through the intermediate scripts, you're ready for it. So yeah, I think universality is a little bit out, except insofar as for the people who really get hooked on Clock Tower, like like you two and me, there is going to be a level of danger and risk and comfort in these scripts that will appeal to, I think, all the late stage Clock Tower players.
Question from chat: Will Garden of Sin and the Tomb make sense to play immediately after Trouble Brewing, or do you think that people should still go to BMR and SMV?
I think definitely going through Bad Moon Rising and Sex and Violence. Garden of Sin has one of the core premises of that is a bounty of alignment change. There is that's kind of more than the one or two like that can happen in, you know, the little bit here and there that can happen in Sex and Violence. Garden of Sin is a bit of a bonanza. To go straight from Trouble Brewing to that would be too much whiplash. Just to give an example, yeah, the progression is definitely recommended. Just like how principles in Trouble Brewing prepare you for the more complex ideas in Sex and Violence, the kind of intermediate idea of something like a klutz, to bring that example up again, in Sex and Violence prepares you for those make or break characters in Garden of Sin, Midnight, and the Tomb.
Okay, that's very interesting. People seem to be surprised to hear that Garden of Sin will contain alignment changing.
Well, look, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Again, I'm not the designer. I just know them. Yeah.
Obviously,
but my most recent understanding is Garden of Sin that it was a bit of an alignment switcheroo. Yeah.
You did say earlier that that you've not seen the scripts in a while. So how much do you think that they've changed?
No. I think there was a few recent plays of them, but yeah, we really are just trying to get, and I say we, I mean we as a company, trying to get all our ducks in a row on the existing characters. That's, as we talked about earlier, the Twitter account and all that, before heavily turning to the expansions, kind of solidifying the base before getting into the fun stuff. So I don't think they've changed all that much. Within TPI, I think Steven tends to be a bit more of the pessimist. I'm a bit more of the optimist. So I think the scripts are probably a bit further along than he would think they are. So I think they're in decent shape. They'll still need a lot of work, a lot of play. It'll be fun to get back into those. I'm looking forward to playing them myself. As I said, I was out of Australia for a lot of 2016, and that was sort of when, in the Sydney community at least, the custom script bonanza happened. So I've kind of missed a lot of the initial forays into experimental and custom scripts and stuff. So just getting back into the process of iterating a core Clock Tower script won't have happened for me since nearly a decade. And I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be so cool. Yeah.
Do feel free to jump on any of the questions you sent out, by the way.
Okay.
So the rumor had been for a while that the Tomb and Garden of Sin both have very public demons, and we got a question that says that a storyteller could even be able to ask, so which demon do we want to play with at the start of a game? Is that true? Is that still true?
Again, I don't know, but if, you know, for example, there are demons out there that are like Leviathan, Riot, you know, like Al Hadikia, demons that almost instantly make their like presence known, which make script building interesting. Just bringing it back to script notes, because you basically got different types of game. Like a Riot game, Riot is almost a different game. Like it should almost be a Fable character. That you need the same ensemble of townsfolk, outsiders, and minions that plays in interesting ways with these 4 or so demons. When the question of what demon is it is answered instantly, it's like trying to build an escape room that you can play again. Those that supporting cast needs to play dynamically and excitingly with each of those different demons when the demon is going to be known from the start. Like, can you build a script that with the same townsfolk, outsiders, and minions that plays well in a Riot game and a Leviathan game? I'm interested to see the answer to that. And if that happens with Tomb and Garden of Sin, or one of them, I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think because you're not just building a script or an edition, you're building as many you're building sub editions within that edition, because each demon being known creates a different type of game in the way the players approach it. So I think it's going to be a different kind of clock tower. If that is what happens, I don't think that's such a bad thing. It would be incredibly difficult to design, but harder things have happened. Yeah.
So again, with the caveat that like you haven't really looked at them in quite a while, but do you think of the upcoming scripts, are there any that work that are like the best for if you had a larger player account, so a 3 minion game, or one that stands out as being the better to use for smaller player accounts, 1 minion games? Could any of them be played as teensy? Like, right now TB kind of stands up that
Ooh, yeah.
you could play it as a teensy, but the other ones maybe have like alignment changing or multi-kills that make them bad for that.
Just during this, like I said, I haven't looked at this stuff for a while, but I'm just looking them up now. Not to share what's on them, but sorry for the long silence, but
That's fine.
because you are getting into the specifics, and this is as much as we can talk about the expansions without talking about the expansions.
The unofficial are currently asking when a particular unreleased character will be. They love it. And they guess it every
which the Barrowfog or something else?
No. Can I name it?
Yeah, go for it.
That was a joke. Daughter of Nox.
Oh. Oh man, how many? Oh gosh, now we got to reverse something. We got to reverse something. Yeah, that is just a totally accidental thing you've said. Yeah, that one, without going into what it does, is going to be an expansion character. And I'm pretty sure I know which script it's going to go onto, but I won't share that right away. I think that character is so that it's one of those characters like the Heretic. Kind of any script with that character on it kind of becomes about that character. So you've got to be careful about just releasing it into the wild on its own, because it's like a powerful virus. It'll just take over any script it's on. So I don't see us doing that. Probably also needs a bit more work, to be honest. It's probably been one of the more tested characters, but yeah, I don't see us doing a release for it. Looking at, so you were talking about high play accounts, low play accounts. I think if you're going to go a low play account script, and this might be a counterintuitive answer, I think of, without going into too much detail, the Tomb is kind of the Bad Moon Rising of the expansions. But that also means that it's probably going to work better at lower play accounts. For Garden of Sin, for a lot of misinformation and alignment change, it's going to be tough to pull off a Teensyville. There's sort of the kind of ebbs and flows. The tides don't flow as much within that, with the exception that, hey, Laissez Unfair, that's probably the strongest Teensyville. So it might lend itself to that in that way, for reasons you can probably extrapolate, maybe. And Midnight is about those big plays, those risky plays. And kind of lowers the stakes of a big risky play if you're playing Teensville anyway. I know it's fitting that Race to the Bottom is here on the screen. We took the fastest game format and made it finish even faster. Maybe Teensville and Midnight will be a nice training ground to get people used to throwing caution to the wind. But I just think that a lot of these characters are so big and larger than life that they need a lot of scaffolding in the form of other players, other characters, and that Teensville might not hold them together as well as it does in, say, a Trouble Brewing. But look, I could be wrong about that. Those are just my broad speculations based on the limited information we all have. Yeah.
Sure. So TPI has been working on a lot of projects recently. There's been conventions, monthly character releases, Jinx updates, promotional tours, and various other things. And you did speak a little bit earlier when we were asking about, the internal structure of TPI and some of the changes there. But like, how much of the focus is currently on getting the expansions ready? It feels like we've been told at various times, like, oh, okay, we just need to deal with X or do Y, and then we can move on to getting Steven focused on the expansions. Are we like really close to that happening, or where are we at with that?
This I feel like what you're asking here is to sort of aggregate together a lot of the little kind of half answers I've given to this question throughout the course of this interview. So
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like okay, if you can't tell us when expansions are coming out, how committed are you to getting that done? I'll start with the first part of your question, which is we've been doing a lot of events and conventions and everything lately. This is I say this in most interviews I'm in, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. Blood on the Clock Tower, the story of this game is that I feel like we're always catching up to it. It's always, it has its own life force. It's a community building machine. It's a story making machine. And every time we think we're on top of it, it just grows or expands in some different direction that is delightful, but we always just feel like we're a step behind. And what has become apparent in the past year or so is that there is this burgeoning global community that we can choose to engage with in some degree or another, or we can, to put it bluntly, ignore and focus only on product. And we don't want to do that second one. We've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears metaphorically into creating this really cool game and getting it out there. And we're thrilled to see these communities build up. And we know that the siren song of too many conventions and events can distract us from other things, but we don't want to cut ourselves out of the world entirely. It is an absolute truth that Clock Tower Con Australia for the company was a massive distraction to a lot of the other stuff happening. But to not be involved in that, to not get an opportunity for a lot of the team to get together face to face. This is a group that mostly works remotely, mostly works from home, and just to celebrate and enjoy this thing we've made that we get to play with people. Like, honestly, my original goal for like teaming up with Steven was just like, I just want to be able to go anywhere in the world and get into a game of Clock Tower, and now I can, and that's so cool. And I can get on my computer and get into a game of Clock Tower, and that's cool. So these things are distractions. We have been aware of the danger of just resting on our laurels, doing the fun stuff too much. But Clock Tower Con, we've got to have fun and be human now and then. Having said that, this whole the current iteration of the restructure, which involves us trying some new things, really is just get Steven's plate clear to work on the expansions. I think the commitment to that is immense, and we are seeing some progress. It is one of those things like, hey, you just have to trust us. But I'm excited, and without going into too much detail, I hope my excitement can translate to you and the listeners about that. It is frustrating, but it is also to not get the clear answer of when are expansions coming out, but we absolutely are committed, and I think we're doing better than we used to at limiting our involvement in quote unquote the fun stuff, whilst also acknowledging that we want to be participants in this global community that's emerging, and continue to make quote unquote the community. We want people to like Clock Tower. We want people to have these positive communities, and we think it's good if we're involved in that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So speaking of global communities, translations, we've heard various things about
Oh, yes.
possible translations. Are you brushing up on your Turkish, perhaps?
I am. I am in Turkey right now. I think I might have dropped that at the start of the interview. I'm meeting with a Turkish group next week that's been running a whole lot of Blood on the Clock Tower. Sode Games, if you want to check them out on Instagram, that's SODE Games. Localizations. So we directly, and I say we, I mean Stephen, directly participated in the translation into simplified Chinese with G-Stone Games. That was an incredibly involved and arduous process across all the Blood on the Clock Tower rulebooks and almanacs. There's over 50,000 words. And we realized that this is too much direct involvement to do with every translation. So we partnered with Lucky Duck Games. They are handling all the other translations from here on out. Finding localizers to pick up Blood on the Clock Tower. So eventually we want to be able to have localizations in as many languages as possible. But alongside the current print run of English language Blood on the Clock Tower, there is a German language version and a Spanish language version. Later in the year will be Russian and Czech. And there's a few other languages that we are closer than others to making deals on. But that is slowly filtering its way through. And the app infrastructure is also on the path to being updated to also incorporate these translations. So we will soon have faculty for translations on the app as well. It's going to be great.
Very nice. So some other projects that we've heard about, Stephen may have offhandedly mentioned something about like novelizations, and maybe I think like at a Patreon Q&A about like a junior version of Clock Tower. Should we expect any news about those kinds of things, more like offshoot projects rather than main Clock Tower stuff?
Yes, those are like, we've got Blood on the Clock Tower Live and the Edinburgh Fringe. As the like, my speculation is that like Blood on the Clock Tower is known in the board games world, it's known in the online world, like it's known within the niche community that is, board games and gaming and so forth. But I have a feeling that we might be like a year or two away from some kind of mainstream break. There are a couple of pretty famous people we've been told about who bought and playing Blood on the Clock Tower. Not that they're immediately going to run away and make a TV show out of it or something, but it's like, oh wow, it's on the radar of some of these people. Cool. So that stuff is always sort of happening in the background. There are people at the company whose job it is to field that stuff, to talk about those things. But one of the benefits and drawbacks of Clock Tower for adaptations is it's got a cult following. It's a really great game. And it's got a pretty rich world of sort of, rich world of characters and sort of aesthetics and feelings, which draws people to it in an imaginative sense. But if you're trying to adapt it into any kind of narrative fiction, be that TV, film, novelization, whatever, there's no actual one story within the game itself to hook people in. So that has been one of the challenges in those kinds of adaptations. But yeah, there's any number of things that are being talked about with various people on this stuff. I think eventually something interesting will happen. Already has happened with Blood on the Clock Tower Live. That's in its second year at the Edinburgh Fringe. That's drawing some really fun comedians to it. But I think that some kind of narrative fiction adaptation is only a matter of time. That's my guess, without going into any specifics. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, I work with you on TPI for the online sphere of Blood on the Clock Tower, and in particular the BOTC.app. Are you able to talk about any major updates on what's coming to the app anytime soon? If that's something that's in your wheelhouse, I
Ooh.
know you mentioned earlier that it might not be, but yeah, is there anything that we should expect?
I think I can talk pretty broadly about the app itself in terms of our sort of roadmap for that. This is almost external to game design. Sorry, pardon me. So for the app, it's currently still in its construction phase. It's this amazing thing. Stefan's a brilliant engineer. It's already got a huge following, but we have been deliberately under promoting it because we want to make sure that for the complex game and for the engine it is, that it is as user friendly as we can possibly make it. So plus also when you have an online game like this, which Alejo, I'm sure you're familiar with, content moderation, user moderation will come for you. I have a friend who is much smarter than me, did their PhD in online content moderation. And basically the one lesson that they told us was content moderation will come for you. No matter what. If you have an online space, you need to have a plan. The example they gave, one of the best examples they gave was that in, I think, 2016, 2017, there was a website for people to, like a community social page for people to upload their knitting patterns. And prior to 2016, it was people sharing knitting patterns. But then people started uploading knitting designs for pussy hats as a response to the Women's March on Washington. And of course, when you're uploading pussy hats, it brings in the Trump supporters, the trolls, and all that. And so this kind of the sort of front lines of online American political discourse in 2016, 2017 found its way onto this website for sharing knitting patterns, and they were completely unprepared for this. So with the lesson of content moderation will come for you, one other thing we've been working on is working in the background to slowly but surely try and get a robust and effective content moderation plan and policy in place so that we can protect our users, protect ourselves, give people the best possible experience, whilst also giving people the power to create and curate their own social spaces online. Those are the two major things for the app that need to be done before we can really get it out there, think about what we want it to look like in its release form, its final form. It's hey, anyone can play. One of the things about Blood on the Clock Tower that's great in the offline version is trouble brewing. Here's a 5-minute rules explanation, and then you'll be playing. You don't even need to have played a board game before ever, and you will be playing provided your storyteller even halfway knows what they're doing. We want to make sure that the online interface has, as much as possible, that same level of accessibility. Where even if you're not particularly computer literate or if you're a very online person, you can sit down and get that click count reduced, get into a game of Clock Tower. It's all there. It looks pretty. It's intuitive. And it's mostly doing a lot of that. We just want to make sure it's doing it as much as it can before we get it out there. So yeah, those are the twin pillars. Robust content moderation plan and user interface overhaul. And then it's all systems go for the app. Yeah.
What you're saying is I need to be ready for a satanic panic when the religious right finds out that we're
Exactly.
worshipping demons.
Oh yeah.
I need to have,
It's going to be D&D in the 70s all over again.
I
Yeah.
need to have something.
Get ready.
I need
It's
to have
going to be
something
fun.
ready for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. We only have a couple.
You need to also get ready for the fact when that happens, I'm 100% going to lean into it, and I will be a nightmare for these people and thus also for you. You're welcome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Oh yeah. No, we'll be doing pussy hats. Yeah. Where that's the lesson we learned from that exchange. Yeah. I'm talking to Stefan next week.
Yeah, we only have a couple of questions left.
Okay.
You'll probably be glad to hear. So yeah, the
Well, no,
first
just
one is
to go on timing, I initially projected an hour because I didn't know how jet lagged I would be or what life would be like in Turkey. But yeah, probably a few more is fine, and then I will probably be called away at some point within the next 30 minutes or so. So yeah.
perfect. Yeah, we're not demanding the 5 hours that Steve gave us. Five and a
Oh
half that
wow!
Ed gave
Oh,
us.
impressive!
Um,
Oh wow!
um, on the subject of the app, we kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but if there's anything else that can be said on how the development of the app has affected development of the game and vice versa.
It's I think I'm going to reference a previous answer. I think that the rise of the app, and not to say, hey, it's good that COVID happened, but we knew eventually that we would need to develop an online version of the game. And pre-COVID, our plan was let's get the game out, and then we'll find someone to do an online version. And then COVID happened, and because the Kickstarter was late, we had this growing fan base, but people who were waiting for the game, and then suddenly they're all in lockdown. And so the rule set was out there, and so many different people bootlegged different ways to play Blood on the Clock Tower online. I think April 2020, I was in like a Roll20 version. Someone had like a graphic design thing. So many different, just fun bootleg ways for people to get on Zoom and play Blood on the Clock Tower. And the cream of those rose to the top. It was the Brain tool, and that was what got our attention on Stefan and what caused us to work with him and contract him to build the official one. So this is again like connecting to previously. It always feels like it's a step ahead of us, and because of COVID, now we have an app which is great, but it's this thing that came up sooner than we planned for. So in terms of how it has affected the development of the game, I know that Steven does have his eye on a few fun online things, like maybe in the future 1 or 2 characters that exist only online because mechanically they could only exist online. Something like a character that can listen to other players' private conversations unobserved within the app, and as long as all players know that's happening, then that's fine, right? But I think again, throwing back to a previous answer about the play testing process for the expansions is the online app and online play has given us an opportunity to ask ourselves the question: do we design for online? Do we design for offline? Do we try not to think about that? What order do we approach this in? What's the order of operations? I think, as I said earlier, we're alighting on the option that is let Stephen cook, let him repeat the process that got us Blood on the Clock Tower, which is playtesting with offline groups. But because online is there and it's got its own strengths and weaknesses, just the awareness of it means it's always going to be there. It's going to be part of the process. We know that eventually these things need to move over. I think the transition is mostly going to be pretty smooth, particularly the current infrastructure works quite well, and with a user experience overhaul, it's going to work even smoother, and will hold up to the game design that occurs. But whilst the process will focus on that offline, I think there's always going to be back of the mind, how's this going to play online? What's going to happen there? Yeah.
So obviously the run of characters that was released as part of the NRB Kickstarter, that comes to an end in just a couple of weeks here. We were told on
one
both
more to go.
one more. We were told on the unofficial, and then I think also a Q&A that may have been linked with the Clock Tower Con in Australia, that was actually going to mark the end of character releases for at least the foreseeable future. But then we also heard from somewhere else that there might actually be more coming, at least until through the end of the year. can you shed any light on what the actual answer is? Are there more characters after this one or not?
I don't want to step on anyone's toes here or make an announcement, but there has been discussion of more. Not locked in yet, not to get any hopes up, but the motivation is of more is that there are one or two out there that will. Well, there's a few reasons. I'll just give the best one. There are some characters that are very useful for script building. In that, hey, the presence of this character makes a lot of other stuff work, or lets a lot of other characters be there that otherwise couldn't be. And if we are going to pause the monthly releases to batten down the hatches and go full steam at expansions, and character releases are fun, they're awesome, they drive engagement. We love giving new characters to people, but it is sticking fingers in the dike rather than dealing with the overall problem. And character releases take up an enormous amount of internal company resources. So stopping them from just a time management perspective to focus on whole new products and integrative expansion seems the right thing to do. But if we are going to stop, then there's been discussion about leaving people with a couple of characters we know that will really help with script building, of just letting people plug a few gaps here and there before turning off the spigot for a while. So not confirmed, but there is truth to the rumors you've been hearing, and that's the rationale behind that. Yeah.
All right.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm actually curious to hear from people who are watching this whether they would prefer to keep the flow of characters, or if they prefer to see fewer or none, and eventually maybe speed up the release of some expansions. I'm curious to hear what people think in chat.
And while people type that out, I do just want to say that we took a brief look at the tier list earlier, and I don't know how much you saw it, Evan, but of the characters that have been released more recently, that were released with that sort of like, let's release some of these characters that'll be useful for script building in mind. Quite a lot of them made it pretty high up on the list. Like the majority of them have made it into like the A tier. So
Yeah.
I think you did a really good, solid job on like hitting that mark where you're releasing characters that actually work really well and are pretty versatile for script building.
I appreciate that. That is, that knowing that you're releasing a character out into a vacuum, as I said before about the Daughter of Nox, will kind of kick the doors down and dominate any script they're on. Having these characters that just robust ensemble players has been really cool. I'm glad you appreciate that. Thank you.
So
sorry,
far, the
you said
answers
to
I'm seeing
respond
in
to
chat.
our expansions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also to Schnauzer Club, updates about buying custom tokens. That has been, again, not to announce anything, but that is something we're hoping to get going for next year. Basically, giving people the ability to currently the advantages of online is they can get the new characters right away. But if you want the physical token, that's a little tougher. But we want to at least give people the option to create the same custom scripts offline as they do online. Another thing about stopping character releases is it lets the physical world catch up. We can get those tokens into print and people can get them bespoke. So yeah, there are plans for that. Again, timeline unclear, but yeah, not a crazy long one. Yeah.
And it's actually fun that you mentioned the tier list, Avian, because that links into the next thing that we're going to say, which is a little bit of an announcement on our part, which is that we've had some questions about where we've placed some of the things, and some of the changes that have been made have kind of changed where some of these characters might land. So we're actually going to go over this again at some point in the next couple of months, and maybe reorder some of them. So yeah, Evan, if you have any thoughts on where any of these characters might land, do feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. If you could, is there a link to this tier list you could send me?
No, I can send you a link to the VODs of it, but it's very long.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Just as long as I can reliably look at it.
Um,
I could just
I
watch the
actually,
stream and pause it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can just go to the end of the third one. It's fine. I actually, Evan, sent you a message a while back, an email a while back. Would you be interested, or anybody in TPI be interested? It's Ogre, but in giving us like thoughts on script building with the new character as it comes out, this final one.
Okay. The next character.
Not
All
to
right. Without
necessarily comment on it now, but like just send me an email when it's out.
no, I think that's fun. I'm looking at looking at trying to predict where the next character would go on the tier list for script building.
I think I know where I put it.
Where would you put it? Assuming
You'll have to
you know
find
what it
out
is.
in
Sounds
3 weeks.
I'll probably put it. I would put it lower. I'm looking at a B or a C for the next one. I think.
Ooh,
Yeah.
interesting. I think that
Interesting.
might be a little bit lower than where I would put it. But that's
Okay.
okay. We can talk about it in a few weeks, Alejo.
Yeah,
Yeah, in a few
absolutely.
weeks. All right.
If Evan feels like tuning in and giving us his thoughts in chat, then no, it'll be middle of
Putting this in my trailer right now.
the um. So yeah, we're gonna have another look at this. Obviously, we will be doing the regular updates as and when we get any extra characters. Um, but yeah, we've got 2 questions left for you. Both of them fairly quick.
Okay.
Like one-line answers are fine. But is there anything that you think that people should know? Anything that you like really want to say? Any cool Easter eggs that you built into Blood on the Clock Tower? Just like a fun thing that people you don't think discuss enough about Clock Tower.
Okay. There are so many Easter eggs. Again, I'm blanking on those ones, so I'm just going to tell my favorite story. I tell this in so many different interviews. Forgive me if you've heard it before, but going back to that first Blood on the Clock Tower game at the time, just Steven's Werewolf, July 26, 2014, over 10 years ago now. We were upstairs in the big room at the Salisbury Festival of Board Games. And this was so early on that we didn't have a town square or a really specific specified seating order, right? And this is the emblematic of strategies that are perfect and they're so good they need to be written out of the game because they're an exploit. So the person who was the saint was in that first game. They see their character and they realize, oh man, if I get executed, I'm gonna lose the game. So the room was so crowded and there were so many people observing and not playing the game. And it was kind of like dimly lit. There was, lamps and candles and things, but no overhead light. That the saint, over the course of the first day, slowly withdrew back from the group and crawled under a table, crawled under a desk and hid under a desk for the entire length of the game. And it's just because they realized if they can't see me, they're not going to nominate me. And at the very end of the game, the good team won. The good team killed the werewolf. And then they're all jumping up and celebrating. And there's this random guy there that no one's ever seen before. He's jumping up and down with it, like, yay, we won. They're like, who are you? What's going on? He's like, I'm the saint. I hid under the desk the whole time. Yay. It's just amazing. A never to be repeated strategy in Blood on the Clock Tower. Physically hide from the group.
It's like
yeah.
It's like the classic klutz dive, because the klutz says that you need to point at players, so you just dive in front of where the person's pointing.
Just the klutz. I love the klutz dive. No, yeah, it's close to a klutz dive. It happened in real life. That's my little Easter egg story. That's my favorite thing. Yeah.
All right. So our last question is, can you tell us something about this month's character?
Ooh, okay. Something about this month's character. I will tell you this. I mentioned earlier that I ran a couple of games with it at Clock Tower Con Australia. We everyone who was playing, we asked them to sign the TPI NDA. and I put the new character in one of those 2 games, and it was a winner. The character won.
Okay.
Final day victory, close game. So from a sample size of n equals 1, I can declare this character to be completely balanced, no problems whatsoever. Everything's fine. No,
Perfect. So if
it's
it doesn't come out that way, we can all blame Evin.
yeah, it's gonna be fine. It's a character that to go beyond just that one glib comment. I think it's a very swingy character. It's one of those characters that, despite me telling you it came down to a close final game victory, it will. Um, it's very powerful, but it's got a chink in the armor, and that chink in the armor is a real chink in the armor. Like if you find that chink, you can take it down. So it's gonna be a bit swingy. It's um, intimidating but beatable is my. You can probably gather the alignment from those comments, but yeah, those are my thoughts on the upcoming character.
You've definitely said a lot there. So that'll be
Yeah.
that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Very exciting.
Yes.
All right. Well, that I think is all we had lined up. So, Evan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. You've answered all of our questions. You got a score of 95%. Would you believe that?
Yes. I
Um,
do love being assessed. It's great. Yeah.
yeah. No, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us and to answer all our questions so fantastically. Um, is there anything that you want to talk about now? Usually, we ask people to uh, plug something, but I don't think that that's necessarily a thing here. But if there is
Just
anything that you
blood
want
on
to
the
say,
clock. Yeah.
yeah,
I want to
there's
say
this
thank you
cool
for
werewolf
having
mod.
me. Yeah. It's an expensive werewolf. That's it. I want to say thank you for having me and for asking these questions, for running this show, and for um, giving me the space to rant and ramble and talk about these things. Like I say, I spend most of my time writing a desk these days, and so to have opportunities to speak to you, to speak to the community about the realities and the highs and lows and difficulties of running this thing, and trying to keep the train on the rails whilst giving people the best possible stuff we can is it's cool to talk about. So thank you for that. As for anything to plug, 3 things. Blood on the Clock Tower Live at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival coming up this month. I think it's August 15 to 18, and then 20 to 24. So those shows, if you are in Edinburgh, please go. And in the United States, Clock Tower Con Las Vegas, October 11 to 13, and then the Clock Tower Cruise from Miami, Florida, February 17 to 21. Those are the plugs. Come watch, come play. That's it. Yeah.
Fantastic. If you can, by any chance, send me some of those great custom scripts that you mentioned at the very start, if you happen to have like script images for them.
Yes.
We'll
Okay.
probably play one of them or maybe 2 of them tomorrow
Oh,
on stream.
cool. All right.
Because that's the closest we can get to running one of yours. I
Ah,
mean, we can run. Somebody told me, but maybe better not.
no.
And
Just if you want to do a whole stream of Race to the Bottom or Vigor Mortis High School, Race to the Bottom. That's probably the best script I'm ever going to write. And Vigor Mortis
yeah,
High School, the whole premise of that is, at some point, everyone, good or evil, is incentivized to publicly claim to be evil. That's what Vigor Mortis High School is. So, yeah.
people are now asking about S11, which is the best username. Um,
It's my roller derby name as well. I wasn't even that big a fan of the band. Just the pun is too good, so had to do it.
I agree that the pun is too good.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
so yeah, if we have like 5 minutes or 15 minutes and we don't and not many players will play Race tomorrow for sure.
All right, awesome.
And Navian, I think that well, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me here about every other Monday-ish when we're on schedule. And you can also find me on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We actually have changed our Twitch channel name. It is no longer CT Blood on the Clock Tower. It is now shortened to CTBOTC.
Ooh, cool.
Clock Tower, best of Connecticut. Best of the Connecticut. It works.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you very much for watching. Is anybody currently playing Clock Tower on